Hey, Dan Beagleman here. In this video, Chords and Arpeggios Part 1, I'll show you the basic concepts of how chords and arpeggios are derived from the major scale. And I'll talk about chords in a key, chord inversions, and show you some applications for all these different things that we're talking about here. Okay? Again, this is Part 1. And there will be a follow-up video, Chords and Arpeggios Part 2, where I'll get into more advanced concepts on this same subject. Okay, on to Chords and Arpeggios Part 1. 1, 2, 3. Chords and arpeggios are derived from the major scale being Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Here's a C major scale. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, okay? And here's the scale in 2 octaves. So this way I cover all 6 strings. Each tone or each note in the scale is considered a degree. The first tone is the root or the key center. So in this case it would be C. The second note I hit is called the second. Third note is the third. Fourth note is the fourth. Obviously makes sense, right? Root, 2, 3, root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. When I get to the 8th note of the octave, it's my root again. Now the scale is going to start again. But now, this one I could actually call the 9th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So the root, the 8th tone, and the 15th tone are both octaves of the lowest one. Root, octave higher, octave higher. So if you look at this, you could see the second note in the C scale is a D note. Octave, second note is D also, but it's an octave higher. So the second and the 9th are the same note in any scale, in any key. The second and the 9th are the same, just an octave higher. The 3rd and the 10th are the same. 1, 2, 3, or the 3rd is E. The 10th is E as well. So a 2nd is a 9th, a 3rd is a 10th, a 4th is an 11th, a 5th is like a 12th, a 6th is a 13th, and on and on. So those are considered, again, the degrees of the scale. When you get to advanced chords, like when you hear something like, an 11th chord or a 9th chord, it's because the degrees are taken out of the scale to build the chords. Every chord has a formula. And in this video, I'm just going to be dealing with the basic 3-part chords. You have to have 3 notes to make a chord. A minimum of 3 notes gives you your basic triad. 3-part chords, the basic chord group, is built on what's called thirds. Thirds means you play a note, you skip a note, play the note after that, skip a note, play another note. What do I mean by that? If I look at a C scale, if I play the first note, skip a note, which is D, play the 3rd note, which is E, skip a note, and the 5th note, and just play those 3, I have C, E, G, E, C. Those 3 notes make up a C chord. Those are the notes in a C major chord. That's all you need. Now when you play a C chord like this in the open position, or here, you're still just playing 3 notes. For example, when you're playing a bar chord, the C bar chord, the 8th position, you're hitting 6 strings, but you're not hitting 6 different notes. You're hitting 3 different notes. I have a C, another C, and another C. So I have 3 root notes. On the 5th string, I have the 5th of the C, which is G, and the 2nd string, the 5th string and the 2nd string, I have G. So I have 2 fifths. And I have, on the 3rd string, I have E, which is the 3rd of C. So this chord voicing, I have 3 roots, 2 fifths, and 1/3. Okay? 6 strings being hit, 3 different notes. Here's a C chord on the first 3 strings. Okay? C, E, G, that's all you need to make this a C chord. This is as valid a C chord as this, or this, or this, or These are all C chords, but that's all I need to make my C chord. Now the way chords work, there's an expression called chords in a key. And what happens is if I, again, when I showed you the C chord, played a note, C note, skipped a note, played the E, skipped a note, played the G, and gave me a C major chord. If I do that again, starting on the second note in a C scale, which is D, skip a note, gives me F, skip a note, gives me A, I have D, F, A. And actually that makes up a D minor chord. And if I start on E and play starting on the E note, skip a note, which gives me G, skip a note gives me B, I have E minor. And if I follow that sequence, or that same pattern, I can run all the chords in the key of C. C. D minor. So you can also see this here. I'll play the three-part chords on the first three strings only, ascending up the neck. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and finishing with C. So what I did again was, if we just go back to the scale, play the first note, skip a note, and you have those three notes, C, E, G, that gives you the C major chord. Start on the D note, same idea, and just follow through. Because chords, again, are built in what's called minor thirds. You play a note, you skip, hit the next note, skip, skip. And by doing that, you'll see three different type of chords that come from the major scale. The basic three-part chords: major, minor, and diminished. So again, back to the key of C. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. All of those chords have the same, not the same notes, but they all have notes that belong to the key of C. As I mentioned, for the three-part chords, 6 chords in total: major, minor, diminished, augmented, and then there's suspended fourth and suspended second. I'll use the key of D as an example in this case, so I can have the D pedal tone on the open fourth string. So I mentioned the major chord is 1, 3, 5. I'll go to a D scale, D major scale in this case. I have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. So here's a D major chord. 1, 3, 5. To turn a major chord into a minor chord, you flat the third tone. So since I'm in the root position here, this is the first, or 1, 3, 5. So the third is on the second string. If I flat that note from F sharp to F natural, I have a D minor chord. So the difference between a major chord and a minor chord, they both have a root, they both have a fifth, but the third is natural in the major chord, and the third is flat in a minor chord. Major, flat the third is minor. Then there's a diminished chord. A diminished chord is a root, a flat third, and a flat fifth. So it's like a minor chord, and then you're also flatting the fifth tone. Right? Major, minor, diminished. An augmented chord is like a major chord with a sharp fifth. Back to the major chord for a second. 1, 3, 5. If the fifth is on the first string, if I sharp that tone, I'll have D, F sharp, and A sharp. And I have a D augmented chord. Okay? So an augmented chord is a major chord with a sharp fifth. Okay? So again, those four: major, flat the third, you have minor, flat the fifth, from the minor chord you have diminished, and go back to the major chord and raise the fifth, you have an augmented chord. And then there's also a suspended fourth, or what we call sus4. A sus4, a suspended fourth chord, is instead of 1, 3, 5, I'm going to sharp or raise the third to the next interval, which is the fourth, and that gives me suspended fourth. And if I take that third and go backwards to the next note, from F sharp, I have E. I have D suspended second. So to tie this together, a D major chord has D, F sharp, and A. A D minor chord has D, F, and A. A D diminished chord has D, F, A flat. A D augmented chord has D, F sharp, and A sharp. A D suspended chord or suspended fourth chord has D, G, and A. And a D suspended second chord has D, E, and A. So those are the 6 3-part chords. And just one other thing to mention, there's what people call, power chords or fifths, like, D5, E5, where you're just playing 2 notes, which obviously is used often in rock music a lot. Those are not true chords. A 5 chord or a power chord is considered a dyad, because the 3-part chords are triads. A dyad means just the 2 notes. And just to see clearly, a D5, for example, has a D and an A. It does not have the third. So just those 2 together, there's your 5 chord. Of course, many ways to play it, But the distinction, in other words, with the 5 chord, it's sort of like it's not major and it's not minor. You know what I mean? Because the third is the note that really determines the tonality of a chord. When you have the major third, obviously it's clear you have a major chord. When you flat that to the minor third, very clear that it's minor. But when you play a fifth, like I said, it's sort of like in the middle. It's not major, it's not minor. It has, sorry, that's right. So again, a 5 chord or power chord is not a true chord, it's a dyad. Just thought I'd kind of throw that at you. Now there's something called chord inversions. And what chord inversions are the way the notes are stacked or the way they come out, in pitch as they're being played. As I mentioned, a C chord is a 3-part chord, a C major chord, 1, 3, 5. So since there are 3 notes in the chord, there are 3 ways that you can stack the notes. Here, I'll show you what I mean. A C major chord in what's called the root position, because the root is the lowest note. So you're going 1, 3, 5. Right? Now if I take that 1 and put it on the top of the chord and then play, instead of 1, 3, 5, play 3, 5, 1, I have this. So this is a C chord in the root position, 1, 3, 5, or C, E, G. Here is the C chord in the first inversion, E, G, C, or 3, 5, 1. And then if I take that lowest note and put that, over on the top, now I have a C chord in the second inversion, 5, 1, 3. So C root position, C first inversion, C second inversion. And then if I take that note, that lowest note, and put it on the top, I'll be repeating my root position chord an octave higher. So a 3-part chord can only be played in actually 3 inversions: the root position, first inversion, and the second inversion. When I get to, in the next video, or the follow-up video to this, with 4-part chords and 5-part chords and 6-part chords and on, more inversions, because you take the lowest note and move it to the top, and then it's just the notes reorder themselves. So you can do this now with all those 6 3-part chords. So here are the 3 inversions of a C chord: C root position, C first inversion, C second inversion, C minor in the root position, C minor in the first inversion, C minor in the second inversion, C diminished in the root position, C diminished first inversion, C diminished second inversion, C augmented root position, C augmented first inversion, C augmented second inversion, suspended fourth, C suspended fourth, root position, C suspended fourth, first inversion, and second inversion, and for the C suspended second chord, root position, first inversion, second inversion. All right? So that's how this stuff works. A chord has a formula. A major chord 1, 3, 5, flat the third, you have minor. Take a minor chord, flat the fifth, you have diminished. Major chord, sharp the 5, you have augmented. Take a major chord and raise the third to the fourth, you have suspended fourth. Take a major chord and lower the third to a second, you have a suspended second. So with that knowledge, you can look at it, let's say here, for example, here's a C chord. And here I have 1, 5, 1, 3. So in this C chord I have two root notes. I have the fifth and a third. So I know my third is on the second string. So that's the one that I have to alter if I want to turn it into a minor, let's say. And you have that. If I want to suspend it fourth, here's the third. Bring up the third to the fourth. And I have that. If I want to lower it to a suspended second, take the third and lower it to the next note under in the scale. Right? And that's how chords work. Now I'll talk about what's called chords in a key. As I showed you earlier, if you take a C scale, and if you take the first, third, and fifth note, you have a major chord, C, E, G. If I start that same concept and start on the second note, play a note, skip a note, I have, and then if I start on the third note and do that same concept, it gives me different types of chords. Major, minor, minor again, major. Okay? I'll use the key of D as an example now to show you what I mean, playing what's called chords in the key on the first three strings, and I'll use the fourth string open as a pedal tone, so this way your ear can focus on the key center. If I play a D chord, here's a D major scale. I have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. So in the key of D you have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. Here's a D chord. Now what I'm going to do is just look at each string and just place my finger to be on the next note in that scale. In other words, here on string 3 I have an A note. The next note after that in the key of D would be B. If I go back now, the second string I have D, the next note is going to be E. If I go to the first string, which is F sharp, and play the next note, I'll have G. Again, using the key of D as an example with the two sharps. So I'm just going to, again, starting on the D chord, I'm going to move my hand up on the neck, and each string will move up to the next note in the key of D. And I have an E, gives me an E minor chord. If I do that again, I'm going to have an F sharp minor chord, a G chord, A chord, B minor, C sharp diminished, and D again. And now if I play those with the D root note, the fourth string open, that sounds pretty nice, right? So D, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, B minor, C sharp diminished, and D again, the octave, are what's considered chords in the key of D, because each one of those chords, which have three notes, all of those notes are in the key of D, or D major scale. Now that doesn't mean that if you're playing in the key of D you can't use other chords, but any other chords would have notes that are not in the D major scale. Okay? So chords in a key, again, means that you're drawing the notes from the major scale. And obviously this sounds pretty nice because every note is in the D major scale, so there's going to be nothing that's going to bend your ear. And you can hear things that really work nicely, like for example, Sounds like something from the group Yes. I forgot the name of the tune, but like the beginning of one of their tunes. So anyway, again, chords in a key means that you're going to play the chords that are built on the tones from the scale using the 1-3-5, 1-3-5, 1-3-5 starting on each subsequent note. Now I can apply that same concept to a minor key. Here's a D minor scale. A D minor scale has all natural notes except the B is flat. D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. So now if I play my D minor chord, this little D minor chord down here, and again, that same concept, I'll just follow up. So the A is going to go to, from here, the third string A will go to B flat, the second string D will go to E, the first string F will go to G, and it'll give me this, which is a diminished chord. And if I continue and follow that formula up, or that sequence up, the chords in a minor key are minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major, major, and minor to finish. Now with the D pedal tone, to hear this clearly in the key of D minor, so those are the chords in the key of D minor ascending through the scale. And I'm back to show you the difference again with the major. Here's D major. And here's D minor. When I did that for the D major scale, or the chords in D major, every note belongs to the D major scale. When I did it for D minor, every note belongs to the D minor scale. That's why it sounds like they belong together. You know, they sound like they're related. Not just to demonstrate how you can use these just three-part chord voicings on the first three strings, there's a very common chord cycle called 1-6-4-5. For example, in the key of C would be 1, the 6th chord in C is A minor, the 4th chord in C is F, the 5th chord is G. And obviously it sounds like these chords work together. Right? So let's say I'm playing those 4 chords and I want to color it up a little bit or play some kind of voicings as a second guitar track on a recording, something like that. I showed you the different inversions, root position, first inversion, second inversion. So if I play, for example, instead of playing C, A minor, F, G like this, I can play C in the root position here, and then my nearest 6th chord or A minor chord would be right over here. Okay, then I have an F right here and a G. So I have, if I go to C in the first inversion, here's an A minor right here, F, and G. And if I play the C in the second inversion, C, A minor, F, G. So all 3 patterns I just played are, okay? Why do they sound different? Because in what's called voicings, the top note usually jumps out more for your ear. So you hear that top, that G, or the 5th in this case, jumping out at you. Here you hear the root kind of jumping out at you, and then the 5th jumping out at you. Okay? So C in the root position, A minor in the first inversion, F in the second inversion, G in the second inversion, and then that follows suit. You know, you have the different inversions. So again, what the exercise here, or what I'm trying to do here, is show you how you can play 1-6-4-5, an example. And if you start on a root note, you're looking for the closest. Because I could play C like this, and then I could play A minor here, and F, and G like that, different voicings. But it's nice when you kind of keep them in the same area and you get a nice inflection on these different chords. And then let's say if you were playing an arpeggiated thing, kind of like in the 50s, the doo-wop music, or the 50s rock and roll, the slow ballads. That was pretty much a common thing for guitar players to do, making arpeggios with these higher voicings. And now I want to touch on what's called arpeggios. Arpeggios are playing the notes that make up the chord singly. In other words, a C chord, a C major chord, has 3 notes: C, E, G. Right? So if I go back to that C major scale I showed you earlier in 2 octaves, I'm just going to play the C note, the E note, and the G note. So C, E, G. Okay? And now here's another C note, another E and a G, and E, a C, and an E. So if I play that in order, that's a C major arpeggio. I played only C notes, E notes, and G notes. If I want to play a C minor arpeggio, to make a major chord a minor chord, you flat the third. So instead of C, E, G, I play C, E flat, G. And I'd have a C minor chord, and now if I cross the strings, like I did with the major, if I flat the third and the fifth, I'll have a C diminished arpeggio. If I play a C, E, and a sharp 5, I'll have an augmented chord. Remember, an augmented chord is like a major with a sharp fifth. So C, E, G sharp, C, E, G sharp. Obviously sounds like an augmented chord. Here's a suspended 4th arpeggio for C. I'm going to play C, F, and G, because again the suspended 4th formula is 1, 4, 5 from the scale. So 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4. And it sounds like you can hear how it really spells out that chord. And now the suspended 2nd chord for C would be C, D, and G. C, D, G, C, D, G, C. And it sounds like a C, suspended 2nd chord. So arpeggios, again, are taking the notes in a chord and just playing them one at a time. Of course, there's many, many, many patterns that you can play with these arpeggios, and you cross the neck, you can go further across. For example, here's the C major. What I just showed you was in one position, but if I wanted to go higher on the neck, I could have, again, what did I play? C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, C. So I just followed suit. For C minor, C, E flat, G, C, E flat, G. Right? And I'm just spelling out, it's very clearly, you can hear it. You're spelling out the chord one note at a time. That's what an arpeggio is. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, how chords and arpeggios really just are derived from the major scale. And to me, the major scale is like the basis for everything. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please leave any questions or comments in the comments section below. I'm Dan Beagleman, and that's Chords and Arpeggios Part 1. Have a nice day.